us about the many things in Jacob's life. There is a valuable teaching there for us, and we must learn it and apply it in our lives. Okay? So now I would like to move on, and if you recall, in my previous lesson, there was a reconciliation between Esau and Jacob. Jacob was so frightened that Esau was coming with his 400 followers to kill him and his family for what he had done to Esau many years ago. And he was filled with fear, and God came in the flesh to assure him. And you watched in the video, there was this wrestling between God and Jacob. And God told Jacob, because you have overcome, you are now going to be called Israel, no more Jacob. And then next moment when Esau came, Jacob was so relieved that Esau was not out to kill him and his family. Esau just ran up to Jacob, embraced Jacob and kissed him, and they were reconciled. So through these trials like this, Jacob learned one valuable lesson. God was with him. God was with him. And God did not leave him to die, to be struck by Esau, but God protected him. Okay? So that was what happened in the last lesson we learned. And then, unfortunately, or rather, God's will be done, Jacob would meet with many other trouble in his life. The next one was tragedy struck Dinah, Jacob's daughter. And I'll read to you what happened in Genesis 34. Genesis 34, 1. Now Dinah, the daughter Leah had born to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. So they were in Canaan, and Dinah went out with all the other Canaan women, non-believers, for a visit. Yeah? When Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, the ruler of the area, saw her, he took her and raped her. So there was a terrible thing that this Canaanite did. Yeah, he sexually violated Dinah, Jacob's daughter. His heart was drawn to Dinah, daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. Yeah. And Shechem said to his father Hamor, "Get me this girl as my wife." When Jacob heard that his daughter Dinah had been defiled, his sons were in the fields and with his livestock. So he did nothing about it until they came home. Then Shechem's father Hamor went out to talk with Jacob. Meanwhile, Jacob's son had come in from the fields, and as soon as they heard what had happened, they were shocked and furious because Shechem had done an outrageous thing in Israel by sleeping with Jacob's daughter, a thing that should not be done. Of course, we all know rape is a very serious crime, a crime of violence and lust. And can you imagine, this was about 2000 BC, a very long time ago, and people were very conservative, and this thing should not have happened. And so the sons of Jacob were all outraged that such a shameful thing has happened, that this Shechem, he was then the son of the ruler of that place, did such a terrible thing, a crime, a wicked crime. But Hamor said to them, "My son Shechem has his heart set on your daughter. Please give her to him as his wife." So the father sided with the son and went to speak to Jacob and wanted Dinah as wife for his son, even though Shechem had done a terrible, shameful, and wicked act against Dinah. He wanted Dinah for his wife, father and son. "Intermarry with us. Give us your daughters and take our daughters for yourselves. You can settle among us. The land is open to you. Live in it, trade in it, and acquire property in it." Then Shechem said to Dinah's fathers and brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and I will give you whatever you ask." make the price of the bride and the gift I am to bring as great as you like. I'll pay whatever you ask me. Only give me the young woman as my wife. You see, Shechem, for him, is lust. He wants to possess Dinah as his wife. Any price you name him, he'll pay. That was his position. Yeah, you just name your price. I'll pay. Just give me that woman, because this is to satisfy my lust. He doesn't love her. If he loves her, he would not have raped her in the first place. He would have done the honorable thing and go to Jacob and ask for permission to marry Dinah, because he loves her, not gratify his lust and force himself on Dinah. That is lust and violence and a great sin. Yeah. So I want you to watch the video now, and in the video you will see how Shechem took Dinah and then raped her, and after that, Hamor, the father, went to speak to Jacob to have the hand of Dinah for his son. Okay, and I want you to see how wow this Shechem was. You know, he, as you read in the Bible, he just took and assaulted her. Yeah. So remember, such an action must never be thought of among us Christians. Yeah, to violate another person, yeah, in a carnal, sexual way. Okay, so we watched the video.
When Dinah, the daughter of Jacob and Leah, went out to visit some of the women of the land, Hamor's son Shechem seized her and raped her. When Jacob heard that his daughter had been defiled, he held his peace until his sons returned home from the fields. When they heard their sister had been raped, Jacob's sons were angered and seethed with indignation. Shechem's behavior was an outrage and could not be tolerated. Hamor tried to appeal to the sons, telling them that Shechem had his heart set on marrying Dinah. And then Shechem himself appealed to Jacob and his sons, telling them no matter how high they set the bride price, he would pay whatever they asked. Only give me the girl to be my wife.
So you see how Shechem seized Dinah and raped her, and then after that, shamelessly even asked for Jacob's hand to marry Dinah, and it's like winning a trophy. Yeah, you just want to possess the trophy, whatever the cost, whatever the price you're willing to pay. Let me have the trophy. So that was a terrible sin of rape and lust and gratification. Yeah, and what the spiritual lesson that we learn from this? We have cases of rape in Singapore as well, and I read to you now in front of you what is called date rape. This happened in 2019. 3 men were charged for sexually assaulting an 18-year-old teenager at a birthday party, and they were found guilty. What they did was they plied the victim with alcohol, and then she collapsed to the floor because she was intoxicated, and in the hotel room while she was unconscious, she was sexually assaulted. So these men, 2 of them were sentenced to 11 and 13 years jail, 6 to 8 strokes of the cane, and 3 others are awaiting sentencing. So it's a very serious offense in Singapore, and it is not tolerated. Yeah, they will be seriously punished by caning as well as many years of jail. Yeah. And another case, a man was given 28 years jail, 20 strokes of the cane for raping a 13-year-old. And this, the victim was acquainted with him through one of her friends and called him uncle. Yeah. This is an adult man, and he sexually assaulted a 13-year-old girl, very young. Yeah. And the girl knew him and called him uncle. So what is disturbing is that many of these rape cases are acquaintances. In other words, the victim actually knew the perpetrator, either as friends or relatives, and these people took advantage and forced themselves on the girls. Yeah. So in AWARE is an association of women in Singapore. They say most rapes are not committed by a stranger, but by people who know their victims. Many victims have met or gone out with their assailant previously and are supposedly their friends. This is called acquaintance or date rape. So please be careful, girls, young girls, when you're going out with friends. Yeah, take precautions. Yeah, go out in groups. Don't go to dark places, and take care. Yeah. So we come back to Shechem. So Shechem desired to marry Dinah as an object to fulfill his lust. As you see, yeah, he just wants to possess Dinah at whatever price. Just let him have the girl. Yeah. Importantly, as Christians, we must never commit such an offense, do such an act. Yeah. This is a very serious offense for which God will punish seriously. And what happened next? Yeah. Jacob's son's revenge. Genesis 34, 13 to 31. Let me just read to you a couple of verses. 34, 13. Because of their sisters, Dinah had been defiled. Jacob's sons replied deceitfully as they spoke to Shechem and his father Hamor. They said to them, "We can't do such a thing. We can't give our sister to a man who is not circumcised. That would be a disgrace to us. We will enter into an agreement with you on one condition only, that you become like us by circumcising all your males." Okay, so this was a plan by Jacob's son. They want all the men in the city to be circumcised. And then while they are suffering in pain, they will take revenge by destroying the whole city. Right? So I want you to watch the video, what happened next. And in it, I want you to consider this very important point of hatred and revenge. Because Jacob's sons felt that Shechem has done a terrible thing. They have shamed not only Dinah, but the whole family. Because in those days, it's very conservative. Whole family's honor is affected. Shamed by this terrible, outrageous thing that Shechem has done to Dinah. And so they have to take revenge. They hated Shechem. They want to take revenge against Shechem. And they thought of this plan to circumcise the whole city. And while they are suffering in their pain due to the circumcision, they will kill the whole city. Yeah. So that is what came out of hatred. Hatred led to revenge. Revenge led to killing and slaughtering. Okay, let's watch the next video.
"We cannot do this thing," replied the brothers, "to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we consent to you, that you will become as we are, and every male among you be circumcised. But if you will not listen to us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and be gone." The men of the town agreed with the conditions, and every able-bodied man in the community was circumcised. On the third day, when all the men of the town were still in pain, recovering from their circumcisions, Dinah's brothers Simeon and Levi, two of Jacob's sons, took their swords and advanced against the city without any resistance, and they massacred every male. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem, and took Dinah from Shechem's house. Then the other sons of Jacob followed up the slaughter and continued to sack the city of Shechem. They seized all their flocks and herds, carried off all their wealth, their women and their children, and took whatever was in the houses. No man was left alive, and nothing was left standing. Jacob was gravely disturbed. He told Simeon and Levi they had brought great trouble to him and his family by making him odious to the inhabitants of the land. My numbers are few, he said, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed. But the two sons continued to defend their action, arguing, should our sister be treated like a whore? Shortly thereafter, Jacob left Shechem, and in Genesis 35:1, the Lord said to Jacob,
Arise, go up to Bethel and settle there. Make an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau.
So there you go. You saw the video, how hatred by Jacob's son, or Shechem, led to the destruction of the whole city. And it is just unthinkable, that hatred can lead to such grave consequences. It is from one person, Shechem, who has defiled their sister, and he felt dishonored, he felt shame, and then there was hatred. Not only against Shechem, the person who assaulted Dinah, against the whole city. Every male was killed, looted, properties destroyed, livestock, goats, sheep, all plundered, taken. All the valuables were taken from the city by the sons. One would have thought that if you hate Shechem, the worldly man would go and take revenge against Shechem only, kill Shechem and the father. But why did they kill the whole city of men? Why did they loot the whole city, destroy the city? That is what led to Shechem's, what Jacob's sons did. So a very terrible thing happened in Jacob's family. First, there was lust by Shechem and defilement. He violated, raped Dinah. And then there was a lot of hatred. And hatred gave rise to revenge, killing, looting. And after killing the Shechemites in Shechem, there were other Canaanites in the vicinity. They are going to retaliate. They're going to come down hard on Jacob and his family and kill all of them, because Jacob's sons have killed the people in Shechem. They will be very frightened of Jacob's sons, and they want to retaliate and kill that family, since it is a small family of Jacob and 10 of the sons. Benjamin is still not born yet. So Jacob's family is small, and the rest of the village is big. They're going to annihilate, destroy the whole of Jacob's family. And that is what Jacob was frightened, and he told his sons, "You have brought a terrible thing upon the family by doing this to the Shechemites." Yeah. And then God told Jacob, "Don't worry, I'll protect you. You must now leave and go to Bethel." And so God protected Jacob. If I read to you, Genesis 34:30, Genesis 35:5. Then they set out, and the terror of God fell on the towns all around them, so that no one pursued them. They set out from Shechem to Bethel. The terror of God fell on the towns all around them, so that none of the Canaanites pursued Jacob when they left Shechem for Bethel, because God's terror fell on them. So God protected Jacob, and Jacob knew that, because Jacob knew that there was going to be retaliation. They are going to be doomed. They're going to be killed by the rest of the Canaanites because of what the sons did. But God protected them, and they left. And Jacob would remember this protection of God. So even in a crisis like this, God protected Jacob. God guided Jacob, his steps. Next, you must go out, and I will protect you. And true enough, Jacob and his family was unscathed, protected, and not destroyed. And Jacob knew that God was faithful and loving to him. So the spiritual lesson here is, don't take revenge. Yeah? Revenge will give rise to retaliation and continued violence. Yeah. Sure, if you take revenge against somebody, then his family will take revenge against you and your family, and it will be tit for tat all the way. Yeah. Even in international politics, you see it. One country takes this action against another country. The other country will retaliate by some sanction against the first country, and the first country would retaliate against the second country. International politics is what takes after the worldly behavior, and innocent people are harmed. Yeah. So we have colleagues, we have clients, we have friends who wrong us, who take action against us, exploited us, and we become revengeful, and we hated them. So that is not to be. Yeah. Yeah. So here I have another illustration. A offended me. I hate A. I seek revenge against A. Yeah. But we know in Scripture, 1 John 3:15, whosoever hateth his brother is a murderer. And ye know that no murderer have eternal life abiding in him. So Scripture is very clear. If you hate, you have hatred in your heart, you are not saved. Yeah. You know that no murderer have eternal life abiding in him. And in Matthew 5:44, but I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. So it's not easy. Yeah. Why do I say it's not easy? Because there are people that we don't like in this world because they have done something bad to us, and we don't like them. We hate them for what they have done. And not too long ago, even in my family, my own family, we have conflicts. There is hatred. Yeah. My mother was seriously ill. She was in hospital, and she needs immediate help from a specialist in the hospital. And the hospital bill was very big. Yeah. And all of us in the family decided to help in the payment of the hospital bill, except for one member. Because that member refused to pay, the rest of us have to shoulder a heavier cost for payment of the hospital bill. And that riled me up. I became very angry. I have a lot of hatred towards this member. Yeah. And every moment of the day, I can't help thinking how terrible this person is. He's in the family, the person is in the family, and refuse to help. How ruthless is this member? How unkind? How this person should be punished? Yes. Yeah. And I was disturbed emotionally, and my sleep was affected. I wake up in the middle of the night, can't sleep because there was hatred in me. And I remember the verse which came to me. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their cry. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their cry. God will take care of the righteous, and he will listen to the cry of the righteous. Am I righteous? Why is God not taking care of me? Because I have hatred. I hated. I resented that person. And because of that, I couldn't sleep. My emotions were all disturbed. Every moment of the time, my mind was disturbed and couldn't find rest. Finally, I reconciled with God, and I asked God to forgive me for my sin of hatred. So I'm sharing you with this because I'm human, and I know we are all human. You are also human. And there are people that you hate. There are people you dislike. And hatred and disliking another person is not what God likes to see, what God delights in. God says that we must love one another. It's not easy. It's not easy at all to love one another, especially those who have done you wrong, those who have made use of you, those who have exploited you. It's not easy, but we have to do it so that God will take care of us. Praise the Lord. I'm much better now. I have reconciled my feeling towards that person, and things are all right. So it's an important lesson that we have to learn and seek God's love. So here you go. Another graph, hate and dislike. You must put out hate and dislike and show love. Yeah. And how do you do it? Prayer, to restrain yourself from hatred and dislike, to forgive, not to be judgmental, remove negativism towards the person you hate or dislike. We have to change our attitude, change our conduct. And frequently that thought that that person have done you wrong will come back into your mind. But then we have to restrain ourselves and tell ourselves that God wants us to forgive. God hates hatred and loves a forgiving person. Yeah. And if we are forgiving, God will forgive us for our sin and deliver us from all our pain and suffering. and all our emotions. Yeah. So I just want to share another news about a person who has hatred. This came out in the news in Singapore. More than 200 pieces of luggage belonging to passengers of Singapore Airlines Silk Air ended up in the wrong destinations after an airport baggage handler swapped the tags because he was unhappy with his duties. The baggage handler was sentenced to 20 days jail for mischief. So this person, he has hatred for his boss because the boss gave him work that he disliked, and he did this terrible thing to take revenge, and he ended in jail for his mischief. So the spiritual lesson here is revenge and hatred will cost you much pain and suffering, and even a jail sentence. Yeah. So remember, brothers and sisters, that we should turn from hatred and seek after peace and love. Yeah. That is God's prescription for us, for those of us who have hatred in our hearts. And I tell you, it's not easy to change because we have people around us who are difficult to work with. Our bosses, those who are senior to us, are difficult. They make things very difficult for us. Yeah. And it is not easy to change. But change we must, because our Lord God says we have to, before he looks after us, before he cares for us. This is what he wants us to learn from him. Okay? And I will stop here, and you can go for a 5 minutes break, toilet break, and we will start in 5 minutes time. Yeah. I'll see you in 5 minutes time. Goodbye. All right. So I'm moving on with my discussion. Jacob has moved off from Shechem, and he's moving to Bethel and finally settled in Hebron. So you look at this map, you notice from the top, Jacob came from Haran all the way to Penuel. And this is the place where he met Esau. And after meeting Esau, he went across the river Jordan to the west, Shechem. This is Shechem, where this other young man, also called Shechem, raped Dinah. And then God protected Jacob and family. They left Shechem and moved to Bethel. Yeah. And in Bethel, that's where they settled down for a while. And then after that, they moved on to Hebron. That's where they finally settled down in Hebron. And let me read to you Genesis 37 about Joseph. So Joseph was still very young then, a teenager. And Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, and his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. So Joseph, young teenager, tells on his brothers, spies on his brothers, and go and tell his father what bad things his brothers have done. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him. Yeah, so Joseph was the favorite of Jacob. And Jacob gave him this lovely robe for him to wear. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. So favoritism lead to hatred. All the sons saw Jacob loving Joseph more, favoring Joseph, the sons hated Joseph. Okay, and the story goes on. And now I will now move on in my slides. And what happened? Okay, let me read. Let me read the scripture. Jacob's brother hated Joseph. Sorry, Joseph's brother hated Joseph, and Joseph had a dream. When he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. Yeah. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were all binding sheaves of grain out of the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. So, you know, farmers, they have stocks and stocks of grains. And so they bundle the stocks of grains in one sheaf. And all the Joseph's brother's sheaves bowed down to Joseph's sheaf. So although that means that Joseph's brothers, they all one day will bow down to Joseph. So the brothers hated him. Yeah. His brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? They hated him all the more because of his dream, what he had said. Then he said, he had another dream, and he told to his brothers, listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me, meaning the father, the mother, and the 11 brothers were bowing down to him. So he was very naive. He said that all aloud to his family, and they were very angry with him. When he told his father as well as brothers, his fathers rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I, your brothers, actually come and bow down to the ground before you? So even Jacob was angry with him and rebuked him. Yeah. So that was God telling him what happened. And we read on. His brothers were Jacob, but his father kept the matter in mind. Now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem. So the brothers went out to graze the flock in Shechem. And then Israel said to Joseph, as you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I am going to send you there to them. And Joseph, being a very sprightly, cheerful boy, said, very well, he is willing to go and visit his brothers. And so he said to them, go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me. Then he went off from the valley of Hebron when Joseph arrived at Shechem. And the story goes on. So what happened next is, from their home in the valley of Hebron, Shechem was about 50 miles, and Dothan was another 15 miles north. So altogether 65 miles. So you look at my map here, Hebron is where Jacob and his family settled down, and the brothers went out to graze the flock. So brought all of Jacob's sheep and goats all the way to Shechem and to Dothan. And then one fine day, Jacob told Joseph, go and look for your brothers. They are somewhere in Shechem. And come and bring news back to me. How are they grazing the flock in Shechem? So Joseph went, all the way to Shechem. And then at Shechem, he was told that the brothers had gone to Dothan, another some distance away from Shechem. So you look at the map, it's going up north from Hebron to Shechem, and further north to Dothan. Yeah. So at this place, Joseph would have traveled for about 65 miles, 50 miles to Shechem, another 15 miles to Dothan. So altogether 65 miles. 65 miles is about 105 kilometers. So I'm sure you roughly know what is the distance. It would take a few days on foot for Joseph to get there. In those days, they don't have cars, they don't have, and they are not terribly rich to have horses and carriages. So Joseph will have to walk on foot. So it will take a few days, quite a few days to reach Dothan. And when he reached Dothan, the brothers are there, going to take action against him. And The brothers caught hold of him, threw him into a pit because they hated him. He is a father's boy, the favorite son of the father Jacob. They hated him, and what more? He will tell on them the bad things they have done. Report to the father, so they hated him, and then they sold Joseph to Midianites, slave traders. Yeah, you see this blue line. This blue line represents the Midianite slave traders. They came along in Dothan, and then the brothers sold Joseph to them, and Joseph was then taken captive as a slave all the way down south to Egypt. So, and Joseph didn't know that this little trip to go and visit his brothers will result in him ending in Egypt, all the way down south. That was God's will for him, for a great purpose, to save the whole family of Jacob. But little did Joseph know about this, neither did Jacob nor the brothers. Yeah. So we go on, yeah, in this story. And I want you to watch now the video again, how Joseph met the brothers, and the brothers caught up hold of him and threw him into a pit and sold him to the slave traders, and he ended up in Egypt. Yeah, watch the video and enjoy the video. Yeah.
Leah, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. 2 sons by Leah's maid Zilpah, Gad, and Asher. And 2 sons were by his second wife Rachel's maid Bilhah, Dan and Naphtali. After years of not having children of her own, Rachel, Jacob's first love, gave birth to Joseph, who became his favorite. Benjamin, his 12th son, was born later. One day, when Joseph returned from the fields, he reported to his father that his brothers had been doing evil things, which only fanned the fire of their jealousy. Except for Benjamin, the brothers already disliked Joseph because he was their father's favorite son. To symbolize his favored position in the family, Jacob had made Joseph a beautiful coat of long sleeves, the coat of many colors. In such a coat, Joseph could not do manual labor as his brothers did. They wore only the drab, sleeveless coats of common shepherds, while Joseph's long coat was a constant reminder that their father loved Joseph more than he did them. Their dislike grew to hatred. Throughout history, Joseph has been referred to as the dreamer, and dreams in those ancient biblical times had far more significance than they do today. Many people believed it was one important way in which the supernatural world communicated with us, a way that God talked to people. This was extremely important in the life of Joseph. One day, he was out in the field with his brothers when he had a dream. In Genesis 37:6, he told his brothers,
Listen to this dream that I have dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. Suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright. Then your sheaves gathered round it and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brothers said to him, Are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to have dominion over us? And so they also despised him because of his dreams and his words.
Then Joseph had another dream in which his brothers all bowed down to him. And when he told it to them, their hatred grew to rage.
הנה השמש והירח ו11 הכוכבים משתחווים לי. Shimon!
So it was that when they were out tending the flock one morning and they saw Joseph approaching in his elegant coat, they said, "Let's kill him and get rid of him once and for all."
תלכו ונהרגהו ונשליכהו לאחד הבורות ואמרנו כי חיה רעה חלת הוא. ונראה מה יהיו חלומותיו. לא נקנו נפש! למה לא? אל
But
תשפכו
Reuben,
דם!
the eldest brother, argued, "No, let's not kill him. Shed no blood. Why don't we just throw him into this dry well here in the wilderness?" Reuben's plan was that when the brothers had all gone, he would come back and rescue Joseph and return him to his father. So that's what they did. They grabbed Joseph and tore off his coat and threw him down the deep pit. Sometime later, when Reuben was away, the other brothers saw a caravan of Ishmaelites approaching, and Judah said, "What's the profit in slaying our brother? After all, he's our own flesh. Why don't we just sell him to the Ishmaelites?"
בידינו אל תהי בו, כי אחינו בשרנו הוא. בואו נעשה את זה.
They all agreed and hauled Joseph out of the well and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. Then they decided to cover up their crime by killing a goat and dipping Joseph's beautiful coat in the blood to make it look as though Joseph had been killed by a wild animal.
זאת מצאנו. הקרנה, הכתונת בן ההיא הם לו.
When the brothers showed the bloody coat to Jacob, he was convinced that his beloved Joseph had been devoured by a wild beast, as the Bible tells us in Genesis 37:34.
Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. Thus his father wept for him.
So you see a very sad story where favoritism led to jealousy and hatred and violence. Yeah. And this favoritism, jealousy, hatred had even taken place before Jacob's time. Yeah. Isaac favored Esau, Rebekah favored Jacob. You remember Isaac and Rebekah? They had two children, the elder Esau and Jacob, the younger. And Isaac favored Esau, and Rebekah, the wife, favored the younger Jacob and asked Jacob to deceive Isaac into blessing Jacob with Esau's first blessing. Yeah. So, and that led to Esau hating Jacob, wanting to kill Jacob, and Jacob had to flee away. And that's why all the years that Jacob fled away, he was fearful of Esau. So that was how favoritism resulted in hatred and fear in Jacob. Jacob favored Rachel and not Leah. Yeah. He worked 7 years for Rachel, but got Leah instead. He didn't love Leah. He loved Rachel. And he had two wives. Yeah. And he loved Rachel more than Leah. And because of that, there was contest. And Jacob was not at peace because the women in his family are fighting over his attention. So again, favoritism gives rise to hatred. Yeah, Rachel and Leah hated each other. Yeah, and they contested for Jacob's love and attention, and this led to more wives. Yeah, Bilhah and Zilpah, the maids of Rachel and Leah, came to Jacob as well and was given to Jacob as to give birth to more children and more women in the fight. Jacob favored Joseph among the sons. And because of that, Jacob's children hated Joseph and wanted to kill him. Yeah. And good thing that God protected Joseph from being killed, but was thrown into a pit and later sold to the slave traders. So, spiritual lesson here, do not practice favoritism. In your family, you have children, don't practice favoritism. Give each of them fairly. If you give a toy to son number one, you must give a toy to son number one and also to daughter number three. Each of them must be given reasonable share of toys, of food, of love and care. To show equal love. Yeah. Not like what Isaac did, not like what Jacob did. Yeah. And it all gave rise to bad endings. Yeah. So that is the spiritual lesson here that we learn. Yeah. And especially in Joseph's case, they wanted to kill Joseph and then finally threw him into a pit. And then you watched the video that he was finally sold to slave traders. So why did the brothers want to kill Joseph? Why did the brothers want to kill Joseph? Because the brothers were jealous of Joseph, because Joseph was Jacob's favorite son. They hated Joseph, who told them that his dreams that his brothers and parents would bow down to honor Joseph. So again, we should reflect on this. What do we learn on this for our own life? Were we victims of favoritism or were we the favorite? You know, when we were young, did our parents have one of our siblings as a favorite or were we the favorite? Now, do we practice favoritism in the family? Do we ourselves in our family practice favoritism? Do we love our son more or do we love our daughter more or the youngest more? Yeah, it is very frequent, yeah, in family. And because of that, there are many bad consequences that come out later in life. For my case, when I was young, I have 3 sisters. I was the favorite. Yeah. My grandfather loves me and gives me all the good food. And my sisters, they don't get the good food. And even to now, you know, not too long ago, my sister would say, oh, when we were kids, you know, I got fresh milk and they didn't get fresh milk. So this favoritism, it stays on years after years after years. And those who are not favored, they remember and they will hate. And they remind me how I was favored, how they were not favored. And then I'm sure she didn't like me because I was favored. Yeah, so it's no good. Yeah. So the story of this favoritism is not in the Bible for no reason. It is there to teach us not to practice favoritism. So, yeah, I want you to consider all this on favoritism. So if other people were favored, were you jealous? Were you hateful of your sibling who was the favored one? Yeah. And if you were hateful, even now, yeah, repent and reconcile. And don't hate those who are favored. Yeah. And accept it. The Lord's will be done. And the Lord's will is that we love those we hate. Okay? That is God's will. I know it's not easy. It's never easy. I myself hate people who has done bad things to me. It's natural to hate people who have done bad things to you. Yeah. You can't hate people. You can't love people who did bad things to you. But God's way is a higher way. You love, even though they have done bad things to you, even though you're jealous of them. You have to reconcile. It's important because God says his eyes are on the righteous. If you hate another person, you are not righteous. His eyes will not be on you. He will not take care of you if you are not righteous. So to be righteous, you must not hate. You must forgive. Then God will protect you and take care of you in your trouble. That's the reason. Why did the brothers not kill Joseph? The brothers were persuaded by Reuben not to kill their own brother. They do not want to shed the brother's blood, but just to throw Joseph into a pit. The brothers sold Joseph as a slave to the Ishmaelites. Yeah. The brothers went back to Jacob to tell him that Joseph had been eaten by a wild animal by showing Joseph's bloodied coat. So they dipped the coat into animal's blood and showed it to Jacob and said that this is Jacob's blood, or Joseph's blood. Joseph had been eaten by a wild animal. So Jacob was very sad, refused to be comforted. Yeah. So you look at Jacob. Ultimately, he was the one who was in pain and suffering. Yeah. He lost Joseph to a wild animal in his mind because he was told by his sons. And he cannot be comforted because his favorite was Joseph. And now Joseph is gone. So for the rest of his life, he was very sad, yeah, that his son, Joseph, did not live. And so no parent could be comforted if their child met with a fatality. Yeah. And Jacob had to live this day when he was told that Joseph had died. Yeah. So very tragic things happened to Jacob. This is the second big tragedy, or rather another big tragedy. The first one was Dinah was raped. Yeah. And then his sons went to take revenge and kill the whole city. Another crisis. Jacob's and family was almost killed by all the Canaanites, but God protected them. Now another tragedy, that Joseph had died. So you see the amount, the crisis Jacob had to go through in his life. Yeah. So we read in scripture, Joseph was sold as a slave to Egypt. By the providence of God, Joseph became prime minister in Egypt. Jacob and family was received in Egypt, saved from famine in Canaan. So it was God's providence, actually. Why did Joseph end up in Egypt? Because there was going to be a famine, and many people will die in Canaan and in Egypt. So God took Joseph out of Canaan and moved him to Egypt. Yeah. And then subsequently he became prime minister of Egypt. And then because God blessed Joseph, he knew how to save all the food in Egypt. He became prime minister, saved all the food. And then when famine came, he brought Jacob and family out of Canaan and brought them to Egypt and saved the family of Jacob. So it was God's plan, yeah, that Joseph went through a lot of hardship. He was thrown into the pit. He was sold to the slave traders, and in Egypt, he was a slave to Captain Potiphar, and then the Potiphar's wife framed him that Joseph molested her, and then Joseph was thrown into jail many years. Finally, when he got out, because he was able to tell dreams, he told the dream to Pharaoh that there will be a famine, and Pharaoh made him prime minister so that he can have a plan to save the Egyptians and the people from the famine. Yeah. And finally, Joseph also saved Jacob and his family, who were suffering from famine. They were brought from down to Egypt from Canaan. And there, Jacob realized that Joseph was still alive. And they were reunited. That was God's great plan. So all this, nobody knew. I mean, who would have known that all the suffering that they go through was orchestrated by God? God was in absolute control of all the suffering. Joseph went through a lot of suffering as well. And finally, he became prime minister and saved his father and his family. Yeah. Who would have known that God was working all these events up to save Jacob and his family? So this is the map that shows how finally Joseph was prime minister of Egypt. He has risen to very high. Prime minister of Egypt means he's second to the Pharaoh. Pharaoh is the king, and he's the prime minister. Prime minister, he would govern the whole of Egypt. And Pharaoh left all the governing of Egypt to Joseph, the prime minister. And then when famine struck Israel then Jacob and the family moved from Hebron to Beersheba all the way to Goshen to meet Joseph in Egypt. And they settled down in this place called Goshen in Egypt, which is a very fertile ground for farming. And this is how God blessed Jacob and the family. Finally, they settled in Goshen, and they were happily reunited and saved from famine. Right? So the background was that Joseph's brother went back to Canaan. You know that there was famine. If you remember the story, I will just summarize for you. Because of famine, the brothers from Canaan had to go to Egypt to look for food, because they hear that, in Egypt there's plenty of food, because God blessed Joseph, who has become prime minister, and Joseph stored a lot of food. And Jacob's sons went to look for food in Egypt. And finally, there was a lot of trouble, because Joseph, the prime minister, made a lot of trouble for the brothers, and he finally disclosed himself that, he is Joseph, and has become the prime minister. And he wants his brothers to go and bring his father, Jacob, from Canaan all the way down to Egypt, where there will be plenty of food and they will be safe from the famine. And Jacob then came from Canaan all the way down to Egypt. And Jacob met Pharaoh. And Jacob said unto Pharaoh, the days of years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. In other words, up to the time when he met Pharaoh, Jacob lived 130 years. That's very old by our standard. But by the standard of that period, it is not very old. Because Abraham, Isaac, they lived many more years than Jacob. To him, it is few and evil have the days of years of my life. So he told Pharaoh that his days have been few and evil. Why did he say that his days have been evil? If you read Genesis chapter 47:9, very interesting. Let me just read it to you in scripture. Genesis 47:9. And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the years of my pilgrimage are 130. My years have been few and difficult, and they do not equal the years of the pilgrimage of my fathers. My years have been few and difficult. NIV version. Yeah. In King James Version, few and evil have the days of the years of my life been. So Jacob was telling Pharaoh he has had a very hard life. Yeah? Evil. And why did he say that? I've come up with this little diagram for you to understand. You look at Jacob's life. This diagram shows crisis in Jacob's life that goes down, 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 all the way, and then finally go up when he was reunited with Joseph in Egypt. So why did he go down all the way in his life? First, he fled from Esau to Haran because he feared for his life. Esau was going to kill Jacob, for stealing his blessing from Isaac. Then he was tricked into working for 14 plus years for Laban. Yeah. Why tricked? Because Laban gave him Leah, the one that she does not love. Jacob did not love Leah, but he got Leah. And Laban said, you got to work for another 7 years to get Rachel. So he worked 14 plus years, tricked by Laban. And after that, he got 4 wives competing for Jacob's attention. He was very distressed by his wives, fighting for his attention and his love. And finally, he was fearful of the reunion with Esau. You remember at the place of the Jabbok River, he was preparing to meet Esau, and he was told that Esau was coming with 400 men. He was so fearful that the 400 men are there to kill and slaughter his whole family. But finally, it was a happy reunion with Esau. God protected him, and there was no conflict between Esau and Jacob, but he was very fearful for his life. And then after that, a good reunion, his daughter Dinah was assaulted, and then his son went to take revenge. And he was so fearful of retaliation by the other Canaanites that his whole family will be killed because of the son's slaughtering of the whole city of Shechem. And finally, when they moved on in Hebron, he was distressed that Joseph had died. Yeah, of course, this was a lie by the sons to tell him that Joseph was eaten up by the wild animal, but actually they have sold him to the slave traders. But to Jacob, he was filled with sorrow that his son, his dear, most loved son, had died. And then came the famine in Canaan, where there was no food. And he was so fearful that they would die that he sent his son to Egypt. And in Egypt, the Prime Minister Joseph wanted Benjamin to be sent. At the time, Benjamin was too young. And Joseph wanted to see his own blood brother, Benjamin. He sent his brothers to go and fetch Benjamin from Canaan all the way to Egypt. And to that, Jacob was very fearful that Benjamin would also lose his life, like his brother Joseph lost his life. So again, Jacob was filled with fear of losing Benjamin. Finally, Joseph disclosed his identity to his brothers, and they realized that Joseph was actually the prime minister of Egypt. And then they brought Benjamin and Jacob to see Joseph, and they were reunited in Egypt. So this was the high point that goes upward for Jacob's life. But you look at the rest of the crisis, it is like wave after wave of trouble, distress in Jacob's life, all the way down. There were no good news, all bad news for Jacob and his family. So what is the spiritual lesson here? As Christians, we expect God's blessing in our life. And God does bless us. Yet, Jacob, as a spiritual father of the faith, went through such a difficult life. So, if you think that you are having a hard life now, think again. Is your life as hard as Jacob? Yeah. And Jacob is supposed to be the leader of God's chosen race. And God put him through such a hard life. Why? He is the leader of God's people. Why did God put him so many trouble, so much crisis, so many crises in his life? Why? Because through this crisis, Jacob would have grown in his faith. Like his first crisis was he feared Esau. He ran away from Esau. He was in the wilderness going to Haran. God appeared to him in a dream on the ladder that he will be blessed. He will have many descendants, and therefore that increased Jacob's life, Jacob's faith in God, and he moved on. Yeah, he did not give up in his journey. Yeah, and then, of course, in Haran he was dealt a terrible blow by Laban because Laban tricked him into marrying 2 wives. And he remembered how he had tricked Esau and Isaac. And there was a difficult learning experience for him because he played the same deception on Isaac. Now that he was deceived into marrying Leah, he realized that God is disciplining him. Yeah. And he went on. Yeah. So as God puts trouble in Jacob's life, he learned that God is there. Despite the trouble, God protects him, restores him, loved him, cared for him. Even the terrible meeting with Esau, he thought that was the end for him. Esau was going to kill his whole family. It did not come to pass, but instead, God came in the flesh to meet him, and there was a wrestling match between him and God. Yeah. God was assuring him that he will protect Jacob. And sure enough, when Esau came, it was a good reconciliation. No conflict, no trouble with Esau, because God protected him. And even with Dinah's difficulty and the revenge which Jacob's sons took against the whole of Shechem city, God protected Jacob and family. Yeah. And so with each difficulty, God was there to deliver them from each crisis. And Jacob saw that. Yeah. Until the very end, famine, they were safe. When Joseph was sent to Egypt to prepare the way for Jacob and family to go to Egypt. So Jacob saw that. And that was why God put so much trouble in Jacob's life, to teach Jacob that God is faithful, God will love him and his family and protect them. So, question is now, are we contented with what we have? Are we happy with our home? Are we happy at our work? Are we happy with our salary? Yeah. You look at the life of Jacob, how much trouble he went through, how much difficulty. And despite the difficulties, Jacob remained faithful to God. So should we. Jacob didn't say, forget about God. Look, I have so much trouble. There's so much difficulty in my life. God is not going to remove my trouble. Forget about God. He didn't do that. He was faithful. And because Jacob was faithful, God was also faithful to Jacob and delivered Jacob. Yeah. So this is a very important thing that we have to learn. That we all have trouble. And it is no coincidence why we have trouble. God put the trouble there to teach us one valuable lesson, that he is faithful. He will deliver us, and he will love us and care for us. All we have to do is we have to cry out to him as a righteous person. That's very important. We have to cry out to God as a righteous person. Yeah. If you cry out to God with your sins and not repent and not seek forgiveness, God will not hear you. All right? So very importantly, we must steer away from sin. We must do things which please God and seek God's will and direction for our lives and walk close to God in prayer, reading of the word. Yeah. And why I say this is because if you read the Psalm of David, yeah, David is in the Psalm is always crying out to God for help. Help from, why does he cry out to God for help? Help from what? What is David's problem? David has many enemies. King Saul wants to kill him. Afterward, his own son, Absalom, wants to kill him. Yeah. And so he cried out to God for help. And you read his psalm. Yeah. When he say, help him from his enemies, he also say to God, forgive him his sins. It's as though because of his sins, he faces enemies. And his enemies are out for him. So he cries out to God, forgive him for his sin, and also deliver him from his enemies. David puts his sin and his enemies together. Because of his sin, God put the enemies there. And David can see that clearly. Yeah. And so he cried out to God, God, forgive me for my sin. And forgive me for my sin. Don't be angry with me. And remove this problem of my enemy. Yeah. Let me read to you the Psalm of David. And this is kind of repeated in many psalms. The theme of that is there. Okay. Psalm 38 is about David's sin, yeah? And he says, Lord, do not rebuke me in your anger or discipline me in your wrath. So now David is crying out to God, don't discipline me, don't punish me. Why? Because God was angry with David for David's sin. Your arrows have pierced me and your hand has come down on me. So David says, God, your arrows have pierced me. He's feeling the pain. Your hand has come down on me. God is punishing David. And David is feeling the pain. Because of your wrath, there is no health in my body. There is no soundness in my bones because of my sin. So God is angry because of David's sin. And because of that, God's anger, he's experiencing pain and suffering. No health in my body. No soundness in my bones. So he went on to talk about his health. Because of his sin, God is punishing him, and he doesn't feel healthy. He talks about his body is sick, and his burden is too heavy, and his wounds are festering, and because of his sinful folly. So all his supposed sickness is because he realized that he's sinful. Yeah. And he goes down and down, further down in Psalm. And finally he says this. My friends, in verse 11 of Psalm 38, my friends and companions avoid me because of my wounds. My neighbors stay far away. Those who want to kill me set their traps. Those who would harm me talk of my ruin. All day long they scheme and lie. I am like a deaf who cannot hear, like a mute who cannot speak. I have become like one who does not hear, whose mouth can offer no reply. Lord, I wait for you. You will answer, Lord my God. For I said, do not let them gloat or exalt themselves over me when my feet sleep. So in other words, he's calling to God, don't let his enemies exalt themselves over me. Don't let his enemies take advantage of me, David, for I am about to fall and my pain is ever with me. I confess my iniquity. I am troubled by my sin. So now he says, I have sinned. And because of my sin, I have all this trouble with my enemy. Yeah. I confess my iniquity. I am troubled by my sin. Many have become my enemies without cause. So what are these trouble? Because of his sin. Many have become my enemies without cause. Those who hate me without reasons are numerous. Those who repay my good with evil lodge accusations against me, though I seek only to do what is good. Lord, do not forsake me. Do not be far from me, my God. Come quickly, help me, my Lord and my Savior. Help him from what? Help him from his enemies. And why are his enemies there? Because of his sins. God sent his enemies to pursue David. And you find this strangely in many of David's psalms. It's always his enemies are giving him trouble. And he knows his enemies are giving him trouble because he has been sinful. And God is punishing him through his enemies. And that is not surprising because if you read Jeremiah was a prophet of God to Judah. Why? At that time, the Judah people were very sinful. They commit idolatry. They turn away from God. And Jeremiah says, you must go back and worship God and obey God. And God will then not punish you. But they refuse. They still disobey God. They still worship idols. They still disobey God. Not faithful to God. And then God sent enemies down to destroy Judah. The Babylonians, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, was sent by God to destroy Judah for their unfaithfulness, for their disobedience, for their idolatry, for their sins. So God used other people, use enemies to punish his own people if they are sinful, disobedient. So this is very important for us to learn. That we have to be righteous for God to take care of us, for God to be faithful, for God to love us. If not, we will face many trouble in our life. So we ask ourselves, why am I facing this trouble? Have we thought, are we righteous? Have we told lies? Have we hated another person? Have we been proud? Have we been covetous? Have we been greedy? Have we been unforgiving? Have we think ill of other people? Gossip? Have we done things which displease God? That he sends troubles into our life to remind us that we have to turn to him, seek forgiveness, repent with a broken spirit and a contrite heart. So that is very important that we learned in scripture from Jacob's life. So yes, I will stop here and let me listen to you, whether you have any questions on this lesson. Any questions you may type a chat, or you may unmute and ask a question. This last part, as you know, is about how God put us through pain and suffering, either due to our sins or due to refining us in our faith. Yeah, it can be either one. It can be because you're sinful, God is putting you through a lot of trouble so that you will repent. Or it can be like Jacob's case, yeah? He went through a lot of crisis, but not because of his sin, but because God is teaching him, showing him that God will be faithful in delivering him through each and every crisis. Even in Abraham, you see God teaching Abraham, testing Abraham. Sacrifice Isaac. Abraham obeyed, and God restored him, restored Isaac. There was no sin on Abraham's part for that lesson. It was pure testing. So we can be in that situation as well. And then I'm sure through that situation, Abraham learned a great lesson, that God is faithful. God is a loving God. And God delivered him because Abraham was righteous. He obeyed God. So we have to be righteous for God to be faithful to us, for God to deliver us and take care of us. Yes, any question?
You got to unmute yourself. All right.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Brother Pun.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for your teaching. I missed first class, first time, and but this is I try to continue after that. Thank you very much. We don't have chance to go Bible college, so is Book of Genesis sometimes really myself could not understand. Studying together with my wife, my children sometimes also not understand. My wife, children ask sometimes, there is adultery, there is many wives. Why put like this story in the Bible? My wife and children said, should have some holy things, pure things only in the Bible. Even myself not understand. But now I try to understand as a caring in the flock in the church. I'm as an elder in the church. So in my experience, blessing means sometimes people are expecting when we pray for the sick, supposed to heal, will be blessing. If continue sick not work, people feel not blessing. Even in exam, we pray for the exam must be passed. If fail, not feel blessing.
Yeah,
they feel in trouble. Yeah, many way like this. So I have very fresh experience with we travel in the vehicle in the one wedding ceremony, and we are the Christian people. Some are the non-Christian people who was there, but I prayed for the journey. After a few kilometers, and vehicle is not running. Then we went workshop, and driver told me, you prayed, but vehicle is not work. Your prayer is not listened.
Okay, Brother Pun, maybe let me put it this way.
Okay, okay. Let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish. Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Then I try to I try to convince to him you should be check beforehand what is engine, everything. This is your responsibility. I just told driver, but what he says, what he says, if you're sick, without sick, you don't go hospital to see the doctors. After sick, only you go hospital. We don't know where engine is the breakdown or which engine is the not working. We don't know. Normally, we have system to check every before journey, travel, but we don't know where it happened. Like such answer sometimes difficult like this. Yes. Yes, sir. That's my. I understand. I understand as a Christian, we go through difficult situation. God wanted to teach to us. Full of suffering, full of pain, full of lack of resources, but God wanted to teach some lesson to us if we patiently wait to Him. I understood, but in the congregation, when care for others, serving for others, people expect like that. I just mentioned. Yes.
Yeah, I share your feeling. The flock, they want good things all the time. The world, the congregation, they are young spiritually. So what they think is, oh, if I come to worship God, God must bless me. I must be well. I must have money. I must have benefits. Then this is a true God. If I come and I don't get blessing, I do not get rich, I do not get well, then this is not a true God. Yeah. So we have to teach our flock that our God is not a God of Santa Claus. You go to Santa Claus when you want good gifts, and the Santa Claus will give you good gifts. God is not Santa Claus. He doesn't come and give you gifts. Yeah. And He is there because He is God Almighty. He created us. And we are here because we are objects of His creation. We should be praising Him, glorifying Him, and thanking Him. As objects of the Creator, we do not ask gifts from the one who created us. So they have to grow in spiritual knowledge. That it is true, many people fall sick and some people even die. It is true that many people are hungry and will be hungry and have no food, have no education, have no school. It is true. Yeah? And all this is true even since the time of Abraham. It is like that. But Abraham remained faithful. So the congregation have to be taught that it does not mean that if you are not healed, if you do not get good things, if you do not get rich, then this God is not a true God. It's not like that. It is not like that. Yeah? And as Christians, you look at God has already told us it is not like that. You look at the life of Jacob, you look at the life of Joseph. They went through a lot of hardship. Why did not God protect Dinah from being raped? Why did not God stop the sons from killing the whole of the Shechem village? Why did Jacob have to run away? Why did God not stop Esau from the start? Jacob does not have to run away to Haran. So many questions. And they all bear. Why did God allow Jacob to be tricked by Laban if Jacob is blessed by God to be the leader? Why? Why do all these leaders have to bear so much hardship? We have to educate the flock. If you think that you want a blessing and God has not given it to you, there are two things. Either you have sinned. In other words, sin can be in the form of, oh, you are just my Santa Claus, yeah? You just give me what I want. Here, I worship you, but you must give me rich. You must make me rich. If you do not make me rich, I'm not going to worship you. Then they will meet with a lot of trouble in their life. God will not bless. Second, if they are already blessed, if they are already worshiping God faithfully, but they still have problem, God says, no, this is my will for you. You have to bear with it. You remember Apostle Paul? What did Apostle Paul ask of God? That he was suffering from a pain. He said, God, can you remove this thorn in the flesh? He was suffering from some illness, some pain. And he called out to God, God, please remove the thorn in the flesh. But God says, my grace is sufficient for you. God did not remove the thorn in the flesh. Apostle Paul continued to suffer. And you look at Apostle Paul, he was so close to God. He had to bear with shipwreck, stoning, jail, caning. He was chased by the Jewish people out of the city. He went through a lot of hardship. That is the life of a Christian. If your congregation, so we have to educate, we have to teach.
Welcome to MC Music. Bluetooth mode.
As a Christian, it is not a bed of roses. It doesn't mean that, oh, God will give you good health, a lot of money, a lot of good life, a lot of friends, happy life. No. It's never like that. You read the Bible, it's never like that. If they want to turn away, that's just too bad. You tell them, you look at scripture. Every of this great evangelists, Apostle Paul, Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, they went through tremendous trouble in their life. And here you are, asking for goodness and benefits as a Christian. We have to teach the flock. We have to teach the flock. Tell them the story over and over again, the life of Apostle Paul, the hardship that Apostle Paul went through. It is an example that we as Christians will meet with hardship. God did not take away the thorn in the flesh. Even though Apostle Paul was the best apostle of Jesus Christ. You look at scripture, most part of scripture is written by Apostle Paul. But God says, my grace is sufficient for you. You carry on and experience the thorn in the flesh. So we all go through difficulty. Yeah. And we have to teach our flock. We have to teach our flock that a Christian life is not a bed of roses. Any other Christians? Any other questions? So I think I share with Brother Poon Narayan's sentiments about how come no blessing? How come God doesn't deal with the engine that has broken down? The car broke down, you pray and it didn't work. Well, God wants us to have a car that is not repaired. You have to deal with it. God is not here to repair your car. Yeah, we believe in God not for riches, not for end of all our trouble. No. Scripture says there will be trials and tribulations.
Yeah. Also, also we are working with the non-Christian people sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those who are not believer, they all believe if there is a blessing means happen some new things, as you mentioned. As a blessing means should have some gain in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, people will not feel blessing.
Yeah.
I'm working in the hospital last 35 years. So retiring coming after 7-8 months. So in lifetime, I prayed many patients. Many people accept offer the prayer. In 2 times only, in my lifetime, 2 times only people are reject to prayer. Once, when one mother was very sick and doctor says there is cancer, very painful, and after prayer, feel more pain. So, daughter is nurse. She requests to prayer, and I went very calm and explained sometimes. Then pray to her. Then next day, whole night she couldn't sleep and so painful. Mother feel after prayer she feel more pain. Her perceive, and next day how she is. Just I went in the room, and she doesn't want to come me inside the for prayer. Who is this? This is the pastor, and just came for follow up for the prayer. No. I don't need to prayer because I feel after prayer very painful. Not give the entry in the room. One time, and next time, one of the professor just prayed yesterday, and his operation is cancelled because of some problem. And next day we went for pre-operation prayer again. She's angry. He's angry. Oh, your hospital operation is cancelled. Scheduling. Anesthesiology prayer. I don't need prayer again because your hospital is not good. like this bad experience. But many people after prayer, pre-operation prayer, next day when visit post-op patient, they feel very comfortable. Thank you for prayer. I feel very good because emotionally, family problem, financial problem, and psychological problem, spiritual problem, and the neglected problem, many problems there. When we are available in the crisis, prayer and expending time, people feel very homely environment. And even they don't say thank you for the nurse and doctor, but they are looking for us. Where is chaplain? And we want to, before discharge, we want to see the chaplain and say thank you. Because they feel very, not feel hospital, sometimes feel the home. So many good experience blessing, but sometimes very difficult time. Even we want to cope the situation, as you mentioned. So that's life experience.
Yes, very good. I thank you for your sharing.
Yeah.
I think we will meet with good experience and bad experience in the field. Yeah, it's both sides. Yes, and we ourselves must remain.
Even congregation flock, many flock. Some of the new believer. So we as a Christian, we faith to God. especially we have a forgiveness, we have after death, we have life, abundant life. We include the share to the people, but even strong believers also not feel very good because if not gain in the life, not feel the blessing, even just mature Christian people. Yeah, that's my experience.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, I've come across that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all human beings.
Human
You may
being,
be
yeah,
a pastor.
but
You know,
myself,
sometimes a pastor
myself
also
try
have-
to understand.
Yeah.
Myself try to understand the people and myself.
Yeah. Yes.
Even pain, even difficult, but we are the blessing. Sometimes God wanted to teach something in our
Yes.
life, going through difficult, going through crisis.
Yes.
Sometimes I have experience to share the people. When going through difficulties, God wanted to teach some maturity.
Yes. Yes.
Going through, like you mentioned about the hungry. Sometimes people doesn't feel hungry. Rich people never hungry in life, never lack of money experience in the life. But going through difficulties, God wanted to teach sometimes how to save, how to work hard. Many things God wanted to teach. I try to support to them, but really in overall congregation, not feel blessing if not gain the life. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I talk a lot. Sorry.
But good sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you for your sharing.
Yeah. Finished.
So just now, just to add on, Punarayan, you know, just now about the Cornelius, our brother Cornelius wrote. You said the car broke down, right?
Yeah.
When we prayed and the car broke down, Cornelius say, we prayed. That's why the car just broke down, not to have an accident where somebody get killed.
Yeah.
So it's many a times it's relative, you know what I mean? They will never understand because, especially non-Christian, they do not have the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
To make them understand.
Yeah.
So there is no amount of explanation sometimes.
Yeah.
To our job is not to convince people about God, you know.
Yeah.
Our job is to be faithful and see how God works in our lives, you know what I mean? Yeah. So many things in our situation is relative, you know, it could have been worse, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I understand. But I'm just sharing about the working experience with the people expecting always blessing.
Yes.
Yeah,
Because as I
that's
say, non-Christians
even
very difficult to understand.
even Christian.
Yeah, even Christian. That's why Brother Limpin was saying we have to teach, and then because all of us have different level of spirituality, you know. Like we have a difficult doctrine of why God choose you, you know. We are chosen even before the world start. I mean, how do you explain that to a non-Christian, you know? God is so unfair, you know? Why choose you, not me, right? Until we have the Holy Spirit, then we understand. And we only can give thanks and just the grace of God, whom God chooses, you know. Yeah. Thank you for your sharing.
Brother, I wanted to share 2 points on the life of Joseph from our study today. Is that okay? Do you have time?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
please. Yes.
I just wanted to share 1 point. The first point is timing. You know, is that we think we know that our time is the best, you know, and in Joseph's life, you know, we think God is too late. Every time we ask for something, nothing happens. You know, we think that God is taking too long or to bring things to pass. And we need to trust that his ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. And his ways and thoughts are much higher than ours. So that's what I learned from Joseph. I believe God is trying to teach us a lesson about timing, to let us know that our time is not the same as his time. His time is much better than ours. See, remember, Joseph has been praying, and God has been guiding him. I see from this lesson that every time anything that he wants to do, he seek God's permission, he pray, and then he asks God. So that's how he interpreted the dreams for Pharaoh. So when the situation where Potiphar's wife accused him, and he gone to prison, so there he interpreted the dreams of both the baker and the cupbearer. So when they left, cupbearer left the prison. When he was called out of the prison, he told the cupbearer that don't forget to tell good words about me to Pharaoh so that he will release me. See, there, even then, Joseph, who's been praying for everything all this while, there he missed the point. He depended on man instead of God. See, he missed that point there. See, that's exactly what we do. We sometimes fail. We think God is late, God is this, and God is not answering our prayers. God has his timing, has his purpose. You see, when he mentioned when they came from Canaan to Egypt, when Joseph became prime minister, he wants to bring his family. He brought them to this place called Goshen. Why Goshen? I learned that the word in Hebrew, Goshen, means draw me near. You see, that's what I learned from the passage. You see, and also I wanted to share this parallel. This is what I learned from the Joseph's parallel, 3 parallels that I saw. Genesis 40, verse 14. Joseph should be totally dependent on God and not on man or circumstances. So this is the prison situation, right? So Psalms 105, verse 19, God is with us all the time, watching over us. And Genesis 41:1, it is God's perfect timing. You see? So the parallel is, there are 3 parallels I learned from here, from the Old Testament to the New Testament. The Old Testament, Judah sold Joseph for 20 shekels of silver. And the parallel in the New Testament, Judas sold Jesus for 30 shekels of silver. So the second parallel I learned, in the Old Testament, Joseph interprets cupbearers and the baker's dreams, and one of them was saved and the other hung to death. And the New Testament, the parallel is, there were 2 thieves on the cross with Jesus. One of them was saved to eternity, and the other died and cast into hell. And the third parallel and final parallel is, in the Old Testament, Joseph suffered in the hands of his brothers, but God raised him to be the prime minister, second in command to Pharaoh, to rule the land and the nation. And parallel to in the New Testament is, Jesus suffered, died, and rose again, stood next to the Father to save and to rule the nation. So the point here is, before, I also don't like Old Testament at all. I don't like Old Testament because it is too draggy, cannot understand why no result. But then after the parallel came into, God showed me the parallel, then I realized, someone said this, I don't know who, New Testament is concealed in the Old Testament, and the Old Testament is revealed in the New Testament. That's all, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson.
You're welcome.
Weebun, shall we stop here? Can we close in a word of prayer?